Hello everyone, GoldenNova here. Hidden Summoners may not have been the first deck build pack to feature Link monsters, but it was the first to showcase how it could work alongside and supplement other summoning methods. See, in the first year of the Link era, from Code of the Duelist to Flames of Destruction, the focus was showcasing the new addition to the mechanics. But now that the network newcomers had had their moment of glory, it was time to prove that they could play nice with all the monsters their arrival had effectively nerfed. So while Cybernetic Horizon, Soul Fusion, and Savage Strike would feature synergies with Ritual, Fusion, and Synchro monsters respectively, Hidden Summoners would do all three at once with the retrained Neph the Spellcasters, Prank Kids, and Mayakashi. And the undisputed champion of the three is Prank Kids. Sure, Mayakashi have had sundry cards splashed into the odd zombie deck, but nothing beats watching the 2018 YCS Milan Finals and seeing Din Kabui using Prank Kids to dance circles around Thunder Dragons, piloted by Federico Micozzi. But despite the initial hype, the theme didn't last in the competitive circuit for long. Salamangreat and Orcus would continue to rise in power as core sets released, and with the arrival of Dingirsu, Prank Kids joined the myriad of decks that folded to the excruciating Xyz, lacking a clean way to out it. But the deck was not without its merits. Floating free material out of your deck whenever you made your links and fusions made you very hard to out advantage. And while the key fusion spell of the deck would lock you into the theme for the turn, the deck otherwise plays very well with other archetypes. So when the news dropped of a new Prank Kids Link 1 to be released in Phantom Rage, the community went into a whirlwind of theory crafting that may just revive the dizzying deck, and that's what we'll be focusing on today. We'll put the theme under a microscope to examine the current cards, adjust our theory in regards to our most recent findings, then construct a new hypothesis on what the theme could incorporate in the future. Let's get plucky with Prank Kids! But before we continue, I wanted to ask really quick if you could please like and subscribe if you've enjoyed my content so far. That way you can stay up to date on new releases, and my brain makes the happy juice when good numbers go up. Oh, and ringing the bell is a pretty good way to stay on top of things as well. Analysis videos like these tend to do pretty well, but if you like any of my other series like Field Test and Dream Theme, that's a pretty good way to make sure you catch them, as well as my Friday live streams. Thank you for your patience, and now, consider the following. Prank Kids are one of those themes that don't have a uniting type or attribute, and rely almost entirely on their name, aesthetic, and similar effects. Which is a darn shame because the English localization doesn't really keep the idea that prank sounds like plank. No, not the thing pirates make you walk, that's a whole other deck. No, Max Planck was a scientist who originated the field of quantum theory, and one of the concepts they put forward was the Planck unit, an incredibly small measurement system based on properties of the natural world, not by arbitrary human ones like inches or kilometers. So they're prank kids because they like causing mischief for their housemates, but they're also Planck kids because of how small and elemental they are. I hope you enjoyed this lesson in scientific punderstanding as we considered the following. Let's start with the main deck Prank Kids. All of them have an effect that triggers when they're used as link or fusion material for a Prank Kids monster. They all summon a different Prank Kid from your deck in defense position, but they have their own unique effect on top of that. Fansies is a level 1 Wind Thunder monster with 0 attack and 2000 defense. When they're used as material, you get to send any Prank Kid card from your deck to the grave. This is one of those effects that reaches its full power when comboed with another effect, but even without that context, thinning your deck of cards that work best anywhere but your hand is something that I'm a huge fan of. Dropsies is a level 2 water aqua monster with 1000 attack and defense. When they're used as material, you gain 1000 life points. Very refreshing. There's a reason why this deck is really good in time. And don't think I didn't notice that you're the perfect material for Totally Awesome. It does end up feeling like a win more card, because if you're trying to build to your endgame there are better places for your dropsies than trapped under the mighty Tungus. But the threat is always there, and you never know when it's going to come in clutch. Lampsies is a level 3 fire pyro monster with 1500 attack and 500 defense. When they're used as material, you can burn your opponent for 500. Again, an absolutely hilarious way to get ahead when under the clock, and while it's not going to win you the game outright like another theme I could mention that's defined by their effortless charm, every turn you activate it means the battle phase that wins you the game needs less and less attack points to close things out. It's like death by 1,000 cuts, if those cuts were made by flaming knives! The last one is Roxy's, a level 4 Earth Rock monster with 1500 attack and defense. When they're used as material, you can banish a card out of your hand to draw a card. There's not really any banishing synergies with Prank Kids, but it is nice that the deck has an inherent draw engine, as that means more chances to reach for your side cards or tech choices, especially if you can trigger this during your opponent's turn. There's not really a rock pun I can use here aside from saying that it rocks, but it's definitely not an effect that you should take for granted. Now, let's cover the support spells and traps. Prank Kid's place is the obligatory field spell, and lets you grab a Prank Kid monster from your deck when you activate it. Also, once per turn, if you fusion summon a Prank Kids, all your monsters gain a 500 attack boost, and if you link summon a Prank Kids, all of your opponent's monsters lose 500 attack. These are permanent changes, and stick around even if place leaves the field. And yes, this attack boost does affect any of your off-theme monsters you may have on the board. It's a great way to add some consistency to the deck, as well as deal with monsters you couldn't otherwise run over. It's quite literally a house of a card. Prank Kid's Pandemonium is the designated fusion spell of the theme. It's a quick play, but restricts activation to only the main phases, and locks you into Prank Kid's special and normal summons for the rest of the turn. You won't be getting any free OTKs off of it, but its flexible activation timing means you can use it to dodge a negation, or just trigger Prank Kid. You won't be getting any free OTKs off of it, but its flexible activation timing means you can use it to dodge negation, or just trigger Prank Kid effects during your opponent's turn to keep ramping up the advantage. I'm also just now seeing that the weird arc reactor they're making here has the polymerization spiral in it, and that's just a neat touch. Prank Kid's Prank is a continuous spell that lets you discard a Prank Kid's card to make a Prank Kid token. Hitting the field is a level 1 Fire Pyro monster with 0 attack and defense that can't be tributed. Also, during the end phase, you can shuffle 3 Prank Kids cards from your grave into your deck to draw a card. Both of these effects are a little lackluster for my taste. Like, the token you make isn't going to get you the floating effect, and that's half the point of the deck. And while the recycling is nice, the fact that it's during your end phase means you won't be getting any use out of it unless it's specifically a hand trap. Which means that this one is actually appropriately named, because feeling like I have to run this card is a prank all on its own. The last support card is Prank Kid's Plan, a continuous trap that lets you link summon a Prank Kids monster during any main phase, using Prank Kids you control as material. Also, if your opponent attacks with a monster, you can banish Plan to shuffle any number of Prank Kids cards in your grave back into your deck, then the attacking monster loses 100 attack for each card returned until the end of the turn. This one is pretty cool, as being able to link during your opponent's turn can open up some tricky plays, and the ability to reset your deck is helpful since you'll be cycling through almost your entire supply in a few turns. So it's less of a plan and more of a backup plan. Okay, now we're getting into the extra deck monsters, and this is where things get a little funky. They're split into the fusions, which are the various mechanical creations of the impetuous particles, and the links, which appear to be recreations of animals made by combining the Prank Kids after they've turned into their swooshy forms due to whatever it is that's going on in Prank Kids Pandemonium. We'll be bouncing back and forth between the two, so make sure to pay rapt attention. One of the most important ones is Prank Kids Dodo Doodle Doo, a Link 2 Wind Thunder monster with 2000 attack. When they're link summoned, you can add any Prank Kid spell or trap from your deck to your hand, a great way to get access to your fusion spell, as well as your field spell if you need the extra Prank Kid. You can also tribute it to target 2 Prank Kid cards in your graveyard with different names and add them to your hand. This is where the synergies with fansies comes in, because if you use them to make Dodo Doodle Doo, you send a card in the graveyard for them to retrieve for you, effectively acting as a searcher for the theme. Sorry duelists, this is what Beak performance looks like. The next link is Bow Wow Bark, a Link 2 Fire Pyro monster with 2000 attack, and boost the attack of any Prank Kid it points to by 1000. You can also tribute Bow Wow Bark to grab 2 Prank Kid cards from your graveyard with different names, but the catch is that you can only do it during your opponent's turn, but it also makes all of your Prank Kids immune to effect destruction for the rest of that turn. Yeah, this is where things get a little tricky. Some Prank Kids contribute during your turn, others only during your opponent's turn, and some can do it during either. You'll need to keep these specifics in mind, because if you try to get value out of this monster during your own turn, then you'll be Bow Wow barking up the wrong tree. Now for the fusions. Rocket Ride is a level 5 Fire Pyro monster with 2000 attack and 0 defense. If fusion summoned, you can have Rocket Ride lose 1000 attack, and if so, it can attack directly that turn. Not always useful, but something to keep in mind in case your opponent is low on life. And hey, you can always get that missing attack back by linking to a Bow Wow Bark. Also, you can tribute Rocket Ride to target 2 non-fusion Prank Kid monsters in your grave with different names and special summon them, though they can't attack the turn you do this. Dodo-Doodle-Doo may be the most important monster in your extra for grabbing the cards you need, but Rocket Ride is the key for some of the deck's most explosive plays. Remember, Prank Kids replace themselves when used as material for these summons, so not only do you get 2 free Prank Kids from the fusion, you can get 2 more for almost nothing. And since you can summon the Link monsters with Rocket Ride, you contribute them to get even more value. How's that for rocket science? Next is Weather Washer, a level 5 water aqua monster with 2000 attack and 0 defense. While it's on the field, if any of your Prank Kids attack, your opponent can't activate cards or effects until the end of the damage step. Also, you contribute it during your opponent's turn to summon 2 non-fusion Prank Kids from your graveyard with different names, and they can't be destroyed by battle that turn. A great way to push through damage on your turn, and a way to keep your resources stocked up during your opponent's. You won't be under the weather when you have access to Weather Washer. Okay, time for the bosses. Prank Kids Battle Butler is a level 10 Wind Thunder fusion monster with 3000 attack and defense, requiring 1 each of Fansies, Dropsies, and Lampsies. It must be fusion summoned, and as a quick effect during either player's turn, you contribute the Combat Caretaker to do a pretty convincing Raigeki impression, destroying all of your opponent's monsters. And if your opponent would like to destroy it before it can activate that effect, or just negate the summon outright, then your opponent still isn't out of the woods. Because if they're sent to the grave while in your possession by your opponent, you can special summon any non-fusion monster in your graveyard. This can be anything from a Bow Wow Bark to get back some cards, to any spicy off-theme monsters you may have summoned previously, like Access Code Talker or Boral Sword Dragon. It's a crazy boss monster that has a huge body and a board wipe attached, and even floats if your opponent wants to try and keep it off the board. The name was a good fit, because it really cleans up. Our other boss is Rip Roar and Roaster, a Link 4 Water Aqua Link monster with 3000 attack, requiring 2 or more Prank Kids monsters. They must be Link summoned, and much like Battle Butler, you contribute them during either player's turn as a quick effect, but this time acting as a Harpy's Feather Duster. Also, if it's sent to the grave by your opponent while in your possession, you can add any non-Link card from your grave to your hand. With the inclusion of the Blue Dragon, you're equipped to handle just about any board state. It's also a bit easier to summon than Battle Butler, as you can summon 2 Link 2 Prank Kids out of your grave with your fusions if you have them loaded into the grave already. Overall, a solid boss that keeps you from folding to powerful back row decks, and having the option to grab back instant fusion if it gets negated to do it all over again is just icing on the cake. It'll be a real dragon for your opponent to deal with. And that brings us to our latest card. See, the deck has 2 pretty big flaws. First, no single Prank Kids is a combo starter. You need at least 2 of them with some way to link or fuse them before you can really pop off. Second, the bosses have powerful removal effects, but you lose them if you use them. A 3 material fusion and a Link 4 need to be destroying a ton of cards to make it feel worth it. But that's all deftly handled by the introduction of new support coming out in Phantom Rage. Presenting Prank Kids Meow Meow. It's a Link 1 Earth Rock Link monster with 1000 attack, requiring 1 level 4 or lower Prank Kids monster, and you can only Link summon 1 of them per turn. If a Prank Kids monster activates any of their effects during your opponent's turn by attributing themselves as cost, you can replace that cost by banishing Meow Meow from your field or grave instead, and you can only do this once per turn. This is really neat. This gives you the option to keep Weather Washer and Bow Wow Bark should you need the extra board presence, but the primary reason you're using this is to get a ton of value out of Battle Butler and Rip Roar and Roaster. Having a Raigeki or Harpy's Feather Duster at quick effect speed while maintaining your biggest threat is incredible, and will let you continue to apply pressure to your opponent turn after turn. But that's just what you can glean from the effect text. It's important, but the real breakthrough is the fact that the theme now has its own Salamangreat Almirage, turning any main deck Prank Kid monster into a combo starter. Like, let's imagine you start with, Dropsies and no other cards to start your plays on. You can normal summon Dropsies, link into Meow Meow, summon Fansies to the board, then link those 2 into Dodo-Doodle-Doo. Dodo can grab you Prank Kid's place while you send Pandemonium to the grave with Fansies, then summon Lampsies. Activate Place so you can grab Roxy's, tribute the Dodo-Doodle-Doo to grab Pandemonium, plus any other Prank Kid that you've used so far, then use Pandemonium to fuse Lampsies and Roxy's into Weather Washer, summoning 2 more Prank Kids. At this point, you can link your 2 new Prank Kids into Bow Wow Bark, which will admittedly not float into anything, but you can boost the Weather Washer, and if you tribute it on your opponent's turn before the Weather Washer, you'll have 2 links to revive with the Rainy Robot. And once again, this is all off of a single card now. So with that established, what tech cards can we introduce to make the most out of the rest of our hand? An archetype that we haven't heard from in a bit is Nemesis. Funnily enough, all the small ones have the same type and attribute combos as our prank kids. With all the banishing you'll be doing with Roxy's and Meow Meow, the Nemesis cards can help recycle them for later use, and make for some keen link material. But they can also be used to leverage the arch Nemesis monsters, powerful board wipes that can lock out entire strategies. Prank kids are exceptionally well suited for this, considering their lack of uniform typing and attributes, allowing you to use Ashatos or Protoss to destroy your own Roxys to halt any aspiring Adamansa player. Another tempting archetype to include is Invoked. Alistair gives you another fusion spell you can use that doesn't lock you into a particular theme, and gives you access to a whole other suite of effects. You can even link summon Madness Alistair if you're so inclined. Unfortunately, the extra deck is already stuffed to the rafters. Running 2 of each prank kid leaves you with a staggering single slot in your extra, so unless you go very slim with your extenders, you won't have room to take full advantage of the skilled spellcaster. Thunder Dragon Fusion is a pretty stellar inclusion. If your grave has all the right material, you can use it to make Battle Butler and recycle a whole, well, cycle of prank kids. Bonus, you get to search fansies the turn afterwards with Thunder Dragon Fusion's grave effect, and we all know how easy it is to leverage a single prank kid into a full combo now. Finally, Pot of Avarice is an interesting include, but should be used with caution. While you'll easily fill your grave with enough monsters to activate it, much of your advantage comes from using those monsters in the grave. Avarice can be a good emergency stopgap in case you need to refresh your grind game, but use it sparingly. And that's all for today's video. I'm confident that, with some training and innovation, prank kids can rise to the top and claim the glory they were owed when they were first released. There's also the possibility that we haven't even seen the full extent of their support, as up till now, every type and attribute combination has had both a link and a fusion monster, and we can only speculate on what the Earth Rock fusion monster could look like. Personally, I'm hoping they turn the house into a giant mecha. But what do you all think? Are you just as excited to use the Particle Pals to pull one over on your opponent? Or is this all a flash in the pan that will last just as long as their scientific namesakes? And what cards would you like to see played alongside prank kids? Who knows? You might see your choices in my next livestream. Let me know in the comments, and if you haven't already, please make sure to like and subscribe. Also, the first video of the Dungeons & Dragons podcast that I'm featuring in just went live, so if you want to listen to me sling some spells, go check it out. Thank you all so very much for watching, and I'll see you next time. Bye-bye. Meow. Prank kids meow meow.